This video will not be monetized, so I'm asking everybody to donate to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App so I can continue making content. And I want to thank you for your support.
Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere.
One of my viewers sent me a link to an extremely disturbing video of a man who murdered his neighbor and his wife over a dispute over snow in Plains Township, Pennsylvania. Now, according to reports, 47-year-old James Spade got upset because his neighbor, James Goy, and his wife, Lisa, were shoveling snow into his property and decided, because he was in an ongoing dispute with this individual, this time to take out a firearm to shoot and kill both the man and his wife, and then later on in the video then decided to come back out with a long gun to then finish murdering both of his neighbors. And after murdering both of his neighbors, this 47-year-old man then decided to take his life with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, most people who are reporting on this incident are talking about it as it was some sort of isolated case as related to the dispute over the snow, but when I take a critical examination of this incident, I see yet another incident that fits right in line with the pattern and profile I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And when I look at your James Spade, from the way he behaved in that video, it's clear to me that he is a textbook beta male, and he was clearly participating in the extreme as related to the spectrum of violent behaviors like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And when I look at this whole feud between these two neighbors, James Spade and your James Goy and his wife Lisa, it clearly shows me that neither party had learned any sort of male life skills or male survival skills, and neither had learned the most important male life skill a man can have, and that is one, critical thinking, and two, conflict resolution. Because according to reports, these neighbors had been feuding for years, and it looks like this one incident, which was, as I see it, attempt to passive aggressively go after the other neighbor, was the thing that led to this James Spade eventually exploding in a rage, where he participated in this extreme act of violence with malice aforethought. And the reason why I can say that he was participating in this act of violence with malice aforethought is because in the video we see him not only shoot the man and the woman with the pistol, we also see him then go back into the house, take out a long gun or rifle, as some people have called it, and use this rifle to finish murdering both of his neighbors. So this man was so caught up in his emotions over this feud he was having with his neighbors, and so angry about this ongoing feud, that he was not thinking critically about the consequences of his actions until later, which is something that beta males do. Usually these guys get so caught up in their feelings about things that they don't think about the consequences of them later. And when they finally start to think about the consequences of their actions, that's when many of these males will go and take their lives. And the reason why they go and take their lives is because they have to really think about the whole idea of being charged with first-degree murder and having to do life in prison. And because these males cannot deal with the consequences of their actions and don't want to wind up going to prison for the rest of their lives. That's when these males take their own lives because they can't face up to the behaviors they have participated in, and they don't want to take responsibility for the behaviors they've participated in. But when I take a critical, again, examination of this incident, it really shows us a clear textbook example of the spectrum of violent behaviors your beta males will participate in, and it shows us how many of these beta males, how dangerous they can be when they get emotional. Because after watching this video and seeing this male just continue to just get angrier and angrier and continue to go back and forth with this other man, I could clearly see how dangerous these beta males can be. And as somebody who's grown up with beta males, I know how dangerous they are, but this video just shows us how extreme their behaviors can become. And it's a clear example of why these males are extremely dangerous. And the main reason why these males are extremely dangerous is because they never learned male life skills like critical thinking, the ability to use logic and reason, or the ability to problem solve in a logical and rational way. Because if you are having an issue with a neighbor, then sometimes it's best to just stop being that person's neighbor, pack your stuff, sell your home, and move. Because what a healthy person does is if they see a person is being toxic, they move themselves from the toxic person. Unfortunately, many beta males, because they were raised in single parent households, have a very codependent frame of thinking. And what they will do instead of walking away from the toxic person is try to stay in that situation, not understanding that this is a situation where you're going to be in a power struggle where you will never win. Because oftentimes your beta males are too proud to admit that this situation is out of control, and they're too proud to admit that, to walk away, because this is something that they get from their single mothers, because a lot of single mothers are very proud and very arrogant, and they refuse to admit, hey, this situation isn't working, and they believe that they can make the square peg fit into the round hole. Unfortunately, in this case, this neighbor, still trying to make this square peg fit into a round hole, wound up in a situation where he was continuing to go back and forth with this neighbor, and eventually these feelings simmered and boiled, which were boiling for years, finally erupted and exploded into this beta male rage, which led to this extreme as related to the spectrum of violent behaviors, because things had to get really heated for this guy to take out a pistol to shoot his neighbors first, and then take out a rifle or a long gun to finish them off, and then do this on a public street, all in the face of witnesses. And then after seeing all those witnesses, that's probably when this male, James Spade, probably wound up committing suicide, because he knew that after this he was going to go to jail, to prison for the rest of his life. Not jail, because jail is where they take you before they try you, and then they take you to prison after you're convicted. And he probably thought about the final fate of winding up in prison, and he didn't want to face, that kind of justice, and that's why he wound up taking his life. But this incident really is part of a new and very disturbing trend with this man crisis I'm seeing with this country. I mean, I've seen several incidents this year which really prove a point that I presented, that said things were going to get worse before they got better. And we're seeing an escalation in the extremes as related to the spectrum of violent behaviors these beta males have been participating in. I mean, over the last couple of months of this brand new year, we have seen these beta males go out here and murder families, murder their mother, and even had one of these beta males in Kentucky getting ready to put out a contract to murder his own mother just to get property. And it just, again, shows how dangerous these beta males are and how these ticking time bombs, when they explode, can do serious damage to whatever community they are a part of. Because your beta male, what's the scariest thing about them is most people don't know how dangerous these guys are, and they don't know that they're living near a human landmine, and all it takes is stepping the wrong way, and that landmine can possibly explode and do harm to you and do harm to your family. And in this case, these people had been dancing around this human landmine for several years, and they had been poking this human landmine for several years before he eventually wound up exploding and wound up murdering his neighbor and his wife. And this whole incident again shows that if you don't have critical thinking skills, you will wind up continuing to go back and forth with this type of toxic individual. But the ultimate solution you have for dealing with this type of individual, when you see them trying to start some beef or start some drama, is you just have to take the L, pack your stuff and move, and walk away from this type of individual, because this type of individual, they don't have good control over their emotions. They don't have a good sense of self. They don't have good male life skills and survival skills. They don't have good discipline or self-control. And you have to be the person with the bigger character and resolve. And sometimes being the bigger person means walking away from this kind of individual, because this kind of individual, this person will put your life at risk. And this type of person, they're extremely dangerous. And I keep saying that they're dangerous because I want you to understand how, from what I saw in the video, what was there. Because what I saw in that video was a man who just did not know how to problem solve, how to conflict resolve, and did not know how to walk away on one side. And I also saw on the other side another neighbor who was trying to be passive aggressive and thinking that this would get on this guy's nerves. And you don't want to, again, push the buttons of a beta male, because beta males harbor anger for years, and then eventually they explode in this rage where they go out here and do so much harm to people for not only the one thing you're doing right now that they think is offensive, but for years of things. And that's why they go to these extremes, and that's why we see this malice of forethought in their actions. And when I looked at that whole video, I just, again, saw another incident in America's ongoing man crisis, a crisis most people in America refuse to acknowledge. And the reason why they refuse to acknowledge it is because that would mean confronting women about the way we have been raising boys in this country. Because when we have multiple incidents where males participate in violence, it's clear that there's something wrong with the way we are raising boys in this country. And when they all seem to all fit a pattern and profile, it shows that the problem, again, is with the way we're raising boys in this country. And because we're raising boys in a dysfunctional way, they're growing up to become extremely dysfunctional men. And these men are creating a crisis, and that crisis is leading to many of these males winding up self-destructing or participating in extreme acts of violence. And this one was one of the most disturbing, because while people do get, upset about snow being shoveled over their property lines, why they get upset over these things, many people do have the ability to work through their emotions regarding it. They never get to the point where things get this personal. Only beta males get to the point where they make things this personal, and they want to go out here and hurt other people over something like snow, something that will melt over the course of a couple of days. Beta males take everything so personal that it could be the least little thing that can set you off. And that's one of the things that makes them scary is you just don't know what will set this guy off and what he will do once set off. And that's one of the scariest things about dealing with these beta males like this. And when I looked at that video, I mean, something as simple as snow being shoveled it onto property, yes, I know it can be an inconvenience and something a little irritating or frustrating, but it's not worth taking somebody's life over. But beta males will go out here and take somebody's life over something like this because in their minds they want to sate their feelings, and they want to sate their feelings without ever thinking about the consequences. And that's one of the most dangerous things about a guy who comes from a single mother household. He has this emotions of a woman but the physical strength of a man. And what happens is when you have a man who's emotional like this, he will go out here and look to do harm to others and feel good about doing harm to others, but never want to think about the consequences like a man does when a man goes out here. When a man gets poked like this by a guy who's putting stuff on his property, he understands that he's got too much to lose, and the thing that he has the most to lose is his freedom. So yes, he may talk to the guy about shoveling the snow on his property, but he's not going to get upset to the point where he wants to go out here and harm another person, because he understands that the snow will be here for just a couple of days, but he could lose his freedom for years or the rest of his life if he continues to get into it with this guy. So your beta male never thinks about those consequences on that level, and because he doesn't think about consequences on that level, he will go out here to sate whatever emotions that are all upset. And then once he's sated those emotions, that's when he'll start to really think about what he just did. And once he thinks about what he just did, that's why a lot of these guys kill themselves, because they just don't want to go to that prison with Bubba and Tiny and be traded for Little Debbie snack cakes and be turned into a wide receiver. They don't want to go through that, so that's why they'll commit suicide. And sadly, this is a tragic pattern that has gone on for years, and sadly, it's getting worse. And over the course of 2021, just 2 months into this year, we've seen these incidents escalate in intensity, and we've seen the escalation of the extreme behavior these guys have participated in, which shows me that this man crisis we have is getting far more worse. And I believe the pandemic lockdowns have made this situation far more worse due to the deterioration of mental health in some individuals. And we're in the middle of a very dark period as related to this man crisis. And I believe we really need to step up and acknowledge this man crisis, because this man crisis is something that is going to plague the nation for years. And unless we really start taking action to deal with this man crisis, we're going to be seeing a lot more of these incidents, because we're going to see a lot of males having to deal with these issues as related to long-term employment and COVID-19. We're also going to be seeing a lot of mental health as related to COVID-19. And that's going to fit right into the man crisis that is worsening. And we're going to see, sadly, a lot more violence as related to this man crisis. So I'm telling everybody, this incident, while it was disturbing to watch, this is the tip of a very bad iceberg. And we're about to see the worst as related to this man crisis, because America just doesn't want to talk about it. America just doesn't want to acknowledge it. And America does not want to see that many of our men are a mess. And we need to really start taking a look at that crisis before we wind up with a country that is just a complete wreck, filled with males who just aren't fit for anything, and a civilization that is going to be troubled because we did not raise several generations of boys to become responsible men. Now, if you want to learn why so many males like this man are falling apart in society and participating in these extreme acts of violence, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Coming to paperback and e-readers this April, Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess. The goddess next door must take on the threat of a deadly digital diva driven to destroy the world in this action-packed all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Revenge of the Cyber Goddess in paperback and e-readers this April.